Welcome back to DAO Talk Weekly. This is episode 35 of DAO Talk Weekly, your one-stop shop for everything DAOs. I'm Tommy.
And I'm frisson.
Welcome back, my friend. Another big week in the DAO space. Another week closer to Ethereum Denver. We've been working towards this event for a long time. I think a lot of people in the DAO space have been working towards this event for a long time, and I'm excited to be there. And let's see, less than 10 days, we'll be live and in person, meeting everybody who listens to the pod, talking boots on the ground. I'm excited for it. How have you been, my friend?
So many people are FOMOing into ETH Denver. Like, there's all these people that we invited to DAOs at Denver and to meet up with and stuff that were like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be there that early, or I'm not going to ETH Denver, that are now like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you have room for me? It's like, maybe not anymore. Crypto is so funny. Like, people, the amount of people that are like booking hotels, like, wait, I can't get a hotel anywhere near the event right now, is very high. Yeah, it's a Schelling point. It's a very crypto. It's like when what you see happen on chain, like people, like, there's sort of, you reach this critical mass and everyone FOMOs in. It's very much happening with ETH Denver right now. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm trying to avoid like burning myself out prepping for it, because like at the rate I'm going now, like gonna like make it to the event and think that's the finish line, and then just be like, God, I'm so tired and I hate everyone. So I'm trying to like conserve energy. So I'm excited to do ETH Denver.
Yeah, I think that's probably reflective of a lot of the teams that are having a pretty large presence at Ethereum Denver. So if you're listening to this, be careful. Don't burn yourself out, because like prepping for the event is important, but like the actual like execution of being social and talking about your product and interacting and networking takes a lot of energy. And if you're not prepped for that, you're not going to have a great time, where, there's a possibility it's going to be a great time. We don't really meet that often in this space, in this world, since we don't, we all pretty much live in our own work at home offices. And I'm excited. It's going to be a good time. So, all right, without further ado, let's jump right into the news from the DAO world this week. We have a tweet from GFX Labs, who we have talked about plenty on the show, friend of the pod. Uniswap proposal number 32 to enable the 1 basis point fee tier on Arbitrum successfully passed with 41.5 million votes. Thank you to all that voted. If you're not watching, we're looking at the tally screenshot of the voting bubbles. We see a lot of green bubbles here, not a single vote against it. It looks like maybe there were some votes against it, but that number was,
it says 0% at the top of the screenshot.
Perfect. I don't know if that's a round, and maybe it rounds
right.
up.
It's probably rounded. There's probably like one person, probably Chris Black in there. Like, I appreciate Chris Black.
But yeah, Frisson, break down what this proposal was or is, what it means for Uniswap, what it means for Arbitrum. Why should people care about this?
Yeah, this is, controversy-free, more of a maintenance proposal than relative to like the whole deploying on BSC drama that we've been talking about for the last few weeks. They already have a 1 BIP fee tier on other chains, so it's just like a tweak to the protocol on Arbitrum. I think it's really cool though how like this happens on chain, right? I think like GFX and Getty, we've talked about them a bunch. They're the homies. They do a lot of like on-chain governance work in space, and like they're able to like make these protocols efficient, right? They're doing this decentralized governance where you can't just like turn on the 1 bit fee tier on Arbitrum, even though it's like sort of obviously a good idea in the way that you would for like a centralized product. But GFX is able to sort of like build a proposal and like marshal the votes, do the proposal, pass it, execute like relatively efficiently. So it's kind of inspiring to see these like, in some level, these more like maintenance or like, blocking and tackling level decisions in the DAO and protocol upgrades actually happen on chain in like a smooth way. So interesting for kind of a different reason than the BSC bridge V3 deploy, but inspiring to me at least nonetheless.
All right, moving right along. Another proposal out of Nouns DAO. Tweet from Shark DAO. Sharks, Prop 30 for Nouns is open for votes and closes tomorrow. Anon proposes Nouns DAO stake an additional 10% of its treasury in Lido. How should we vote? We have a link to tally on here. The vote passed 76.73% for, 10.89% against, and then 12.3% abstaining. Pending it actually executed on chain. It's not pending execution. Frisson, break it down for those who want a quick breakdown on what this means for
you
now.
should go see if there's any comments. Let's go to the comment section on the bottom. I'm curious if there's like
no opinion.
Comments on
Agree
it.
that we should be staking the ETH, but would like to see the strategy diversified into Rocket Pool.
Cool. Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic. So Nouns has a huge treasury, but specifically they have a huge ETH treasury. So if you go look at like the top DAOs by on-chain treasury size, Nouns is pretty high, but not super high. They're probably in the like top 10-ish range, maybe top 15. But if you were to then isolate top treasuries by the amount of ETH they have, Nouns I think is probably going to be in the top 5. Because a lot of DAOs like Uniswap, for example, they don't really have a lot of ETH. They just have a lot of Uni, their own token. So there are DAOs with a lot of ETH, and Nouns relatively is one of the biggest of those. And if you have ETH, with kind of the introduction of staking, the opportunity cost of sitting on your ETH and not staking it is becoming very material, especially with the recent uptick in on-chain activity we've seen. MEV and tips from ETH transactions actually go to stakers, and so there's been an increase in the staking APR over the course of this year as on-chain activity is ramped up. So it's really pretty significant for Nouns, like pretty significant amount of basically revenue that they're just not taking advantage of by sitting on their ETH and not staking it. But what we see is like this is a relatively contentious vote where they had already staked a bunch of ETH in Lido, and you have some community members that want to see them stake on other platforms besides Lido. Specifically, Rocket Pool is kind of like considered the most decentralized staking derivative platform. And so, you have some Nouners advocating for kind of diversifying across Lido and Rocket Pool. And then you have some people that think like, hey, it's like risky, right? Like we should just sit on the ETH. I know we're missing out on these fees, but like ultimately, it's risky to kind of put our ETH in play in smart contracts, add some centralization vectors, distracts from the mission, etc. So interesting conversations here. I think this is going to remain a very interesting topic for DAOs to have a lot of ETH in their treasury going forward.
Is this considered diversifying if it's really like you're not moving away from holding the asset, right? You're just earning extra yield. And also
it's not diversifying, it's just like generating
what's
income,
the risk, right?
Basically. Like, the risk is there's a couple things. So first of all, there's smart contract risk. Like Lido and Rocket Pool, like you're putting the ETH into a smart contract versus just sitting on it. So you're adding like basically security, like bug smart contract risk. Second of all, I don't know exactly like how. I think it's possible to do this completely trustlessly. I'm pretty sure. So maybe that's not a risk. Like I'm pretty sure they can just make a governor transaction in the proposal on Tally, and that just like trustlessly, deposits the ETH. So that probably isn't an area. It's more the smart contract risk, and also like I think with Nouns there's this risk that sort of there's the focus, the mission of the DAO, which is to proliferate the Nouns meme, but they also have this massive ETH treasury, and so there's sort of this very real risk for them that people sort of stop caring about the Nouns and start caring about extracting value from the ETH treasury, which I think is what Wilson Cusack here is getting at. So there's just kind of this concern that maybe we should be using the ETH to like actually invest in Nouns instead of being like, how can we generate yield on it?
Yeah, I feel like it's such a small amount of the treasury though. Like this isn't necessarily reflective of like future uses of the treasury, right? I understand it's a kind of a slippery slope, but for this exact proposal, I think that's probably why it passed.
I'm personally, just in my opinion, like comfortable with projects that have a lot of ETH staking it trustlessly, but this general category of something of concern is something I'm very sympathetic to we've talked about it extensively over the last few weeks. Like, the extreme version of this is you sort of like send the ETH to some like black box, not trustless yield management hedge fund treasury management firm that tries to squeeze as many bips off the ETH as possible to generate yield for the protocol. And I think that's like a very bad idea for DAOs to do. And we are seeing some DAOs go down that path. So I totally get that. And also, like, I think the capture risk for nouns is very real, where it's like it becomes about the ETH and not about the nouns. So I'm actually quite sympathetic to the concerns here. But I think you're right. Like, I mean, this individual decision is probably not a big deal. But I actually am sympathetic to the concerns that people have. And like, if I was active in nouns governance, I would definitely be thinking about how to like what incentive mechanisms can we put in place to keep people sort of focused on generating value from the nouns meme, for sure.
We haven't talked a lot about nouns in the past few episodes, but something we definitely talked about early on in the pod. So nouns is always kind of just like experimenting and doing cool shit. Even if I think nouns kind of polarizes people, like the like a gated exclusive club, I think kind of turns people off to it, but also from someone who's not directly involved in it at all, it's cool to see them kind of just like be a kind of a petri dish. Like we were talking off air, like they just have so many proposals. Like if we're looking on Tally, they just are constantly having proposals submitted and voted on. So it's just kind of cool to see the entire ecosystem kind of play out in one
I think
little
I think nouns is interesting because it's different. Like, the mechanism is kind of the opposite of most NFTs, where there's like a 10K mint or whatever. The floor price starts really low. Then if the project is successful, it sort of gets absorbed into strong hands. And there's sort of like the opposite. There's sort of this like slow contraction of incremental supply that's available on the market. The nouns mechanism is the opposite, where at the start, there's this incredibly limited supply because they're minting one a day and they start with zero. But now they're minting one a day and there's like already this relatively large number of nouns that exists. And so, like, yeah, it's polarizing, but I think it's valuable for that reason, right? It's like a novel mechanism that was successful. And I think in crypto, like, it's very helpful to see these novel mechanisms play out, whether they're ultimately successful or not. It helps everyone learn in the space to sort of like watch a new, design play out over time.
Tweet from our friends from Optimism at Optimism Governance, introducing the new Optimism Governance portal built by Nouns Agora. Speaking of nouns, an offshoot of the nouns ecosystem. This is the first step toward transitioning to fully on-chain voting and will also serve as our delegate registry. Cool to see Optimism starting to make significant moves to bringing their voting on chain. So, Persian, thoughts on Optimism's on-chain governance or move towards that?
Yeah, this is exciting. I think Optimism launched their token and their collective last year, but they didn't necessarily deploy like on-chain governance with trustless execution at the start when they first deployed their collective and token. And so this is them taking a major step in that direction. They have kind of like partnered with Nouns Agora to build this like custom interface and solution, but they are using Open Zeppelin Governor under the hood. And so what's cool is if you pop over to Tally and then just go to the homepage, you'll see now Optimism, the Optimism Collective is also live on Tally, which is really cool because they deployed a governor smart contract. It works on Tally too. So you can use the custom like kind of interface that has some of the qualities that Optimism is looking for, which is great on that vote.optimism site that was built by Agora. You can also use Tally, which is really cool. That's like decentralization in action, right? Smart contracts are on Ethereum and trustless. The interface, whoever builds an interface, you can go ahead and use that. So really exciting to see Optimism moving on chain with their governance. And I think they're planning to do a proposal for the Bedrock upgrade, which is like the biggest upgrade to Optimism that's happened since they deployed. So excited to see that go through as well. Hopefully sometime this week or soon.
Yeah, it's exciting to see the proliferation of like the Open Zeppelin ecosystem, the governor ecosystem, start to like take hold. Like even though Agora is kind of a competitor or like something different from Tally, under the hood, like you said, it is OZ. It's governor. It really is the only option right now.
Yeah, and I think competition is good.
Yeah,
Like we we've been evangelizing governor, as sort of like the most secure, trustless, yet also customizable framework or like primitive for governance. And so it's cool to see like another capable team in Agora like see the benefits of Governor and start building on top of it as well. And I think, I don't think at Tally we want to be like the only place that you can sort of like participate in on-chain governance. I think it's pretty concerning, especially as we see these more and more events, like on-chain events, actually happen on Tally. Like this 10,000 ETH sale that ENS did via CowSwap, like that's like a major on-chain event, right? If you were to sort of stack rank all the on-chain events that occurred that week, that's going to be in the top 5 for sure in terms of like impact on the market, impact on the Ethereum like mempool, and just overall like the state of Ethereum. And so like we don't want Tally to be like the only place that people can sort of like easily interface with that. And it shouldn't be that way, right? Because Tally supports on-chain governance, right? So we're not trying to make Tally like a dependency for being able to like participate in governance, right? We just want to be, I mean, we obviously want to be the best place that people choose to go and do governance, but we don't want to be like a sort of choke point or like a place that like you sort of like becomes critical infrastructure, but there's no alternative, right? So it's actually good, I think, to see the ecosystem growing here. And I hope people choose to use Tally for optimism governance, but I think it's cool that also the Agora team is building as well in the space.
I agree. I agree. Love to see it. All right, tweet from friend of the pod. I've said this before, but like this was the first person I ever talked to in Web3 was Sam. So it's kind of cool to see come full circle. That was like a year and a half ago, just wild. In our days in Bankless DAO and the Writers Guild. But tweet from Sam. DAOs are threatened by social engineering attacks, which are frighteningly easy to. I'm going to restart that. DAOs are threatened by social engineering attacks, which are frighteningly easy to carry out in our digital first organizations. I explored how DAOs could audit their social layer security to protect the humans behind them. Link to the Mirror article, which we'll link in the show notes below. Frisson, I know you have some thoughts on this. Sound off.
Yeah. So we talked about a really interesting um, situation that took place within the Bankless DAO around a coordinate circle that they had for peer-to-peer kind of driven compensation, where someone kind of like social engineered their way into control of the coordinate circle. And so I think this is a really important topic that Sam is exploring here, and like understanding really what the dependencies are in your DAO, and if there's like positions of power influence or like the ability to um, direct funds or protocol upgrades in the DAO that are possible to sort of like social engineer, or where there's like dependencies on individuals, really taking an audit of that, um, and trying to figure out what you can do to sort of like reduce those dependencies so the DAO is more robust and trustless, right? And so I think it's cool because the Coordinate's going to like keep investing there to make. I think they released like a kind of big improvement to Coordinate, and reiterated their sort of like plans to have more on-chain components to Coordinate, which is really cool. You can also think about like using tools like Open Zeppelin Governor to sort of like that are sort of explicitly designed to take the dependency on a single human out of the process. So I think DAOs like Bankless DAO, which are not they're a little different than like Uniswap. They're a protocol DAO. We just talked about how it kind of makes sense for them to do their upgrades on chain. Bankless DAO is more of like a service DAO slash like social DAO kind of thing, and so it's sort of like less obvious that you need to do these sort of protocol upgrades on chain. But I think even doing like high level treasury management decisions on chain with Open Zeppelin Governor is something a lot of DAOs like Bankless DAO should seriously consider, because I think it's a really valuable tool to sort of like make it so that you don't have to like do the social audits, or that they're more easily auditable and you kind of have an understanding of where those dependencies are, and there isn't like a single one that can sort of attack the DAO. So I think that's something to think about as well, but I think this is a really important topic that Sam is exploring here.
I feel like a lot of the thought leaders in the DAO space are like looking at these problems and thinking, how do I create content around this or thought takes around this versus just like thinking about it from like a first principles perspective and a tech perspective and just like, okay, well, like use like Dennison talks about this a lot. Like, okay, well, instead of like writing all these thought pieces about it or like arguing about it, why don't we just use the tech that is here to solve all those problems?
Yeah, I think that's right. But I think we need to make that tech more accessible, right? Because I think a lot of folks like, I'll include myself in this, right? Like trying to solve centralization problems in a DAO or like centralization risks by using smart contracts and mechanism design, like it's quite difficult, right? And there aren't a lot of people who sort of know how to do this because it's a very new field. Whereas just thinking about like doing more off-chain like social audits and org design is something that is a lot more familiar to a lot of people and a lot more accessible. So I think one of the roles that we need to play at Tally and sort of others in the governor ecosystem, the Ethereum ecosystem, is how to make these tools that facilitate like on-chain decentralization and trustless execution more accessible to people who are more in these like business roles, community roles, content roles. That's definitely something I would like, right? Because it's like it's still I've learned a lot about on-chain governance, but it's like scary for me to deploy like a real DAO, whereas I can just like keep managing my Discord and try to like, have good diversity and like vibes in there. But like I'm more capable of that because I've experience like managing groups and leading teams and influencing other people and stuff like that. Whereas like, taking that step to on-chain governance is something that is a little bit scarier. So I think that's something we can help folks with for sure. And others can as well.
100%. 100%. Tweet from Chase Chapman at Chaser Chapman. If we want effective delegation, we need specialization. Delegating your votes on all governance decisions to one individual doesn't really make sense. You should be able to delegate your votes to person A for decisions with domain A and person B for decisions with domain B. And then we have a good follow-up from Spencer Graham. Yes, and we need more work on how to categorize proposals, actions, decisions into that correct domain in a capture-resistant manner.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
So one thing that I think we're learning is that delegation is an essential primitive for on-chain governance. I think we're kind of relearning the lessons of democracy, right? Like we like to do in crypto, just speed running the financial history of the financial system is something Bankless has a lot. I also think we're speed running the history of democracy and governance, trying to figure out how it works. And like one of the things that we're learning is that if you just have like Uniswap, right? There's like 30,000 holders of the Uni token or something. They're a governed DAO. Theoretically, any of those people can influence, vote on governance proposals, right, to figure out if something happens or not. But like realistically, most people aren't going to do that, right? Just like the average citizen of your DAO, right, is really not going to. It doesn't make economic sense for them to sort of like really learn enough about any given proposal to really make a difference, right, in the execution. And so that's where delegation comes in. And we've seen DAOs have a lot of success with this over the last year or two, where people, apply to sort of like, you can still hold your tokens trustlessly in your wallet, but you could delegate your voting authority to someone else who you think is sort of like more invested in the project going forward. I think we started to see some of these delegates actually get paid to play this specialized and very important role in the DAO. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve delegation going forward. One of the really important areas I think Chase is speaking to here is specialization and expertise. If you look at some of these DAOs where everything is really run through delegation, there's very impressive people who are involved in governance, but I wouldn't necessarily say there's like a one-to-one mapping between their backgrounds and like the specific functions and needs of the DAO. There are some examples of this. So like Monet Supply, who is a friend of Tally, and like a very active governor in the DeFi ecosystem, he has a lot of delegated voting power, and he like actually knows a lot about risk, right? And like crypto economic like risk, smart contract risk, and sort of like how to mitigate that. And he's able to help these DAOs with that in the ecosystem. But I would say that's not always the case, right? So if you were to like examine a DAO like Optimism, which is moving on chain, if you really understood Optimism's product and space and their DAO, you could probably come up with sort of like the DAO equivalent of like a roster, right? Of like if you were making an NBA basketball team, like, all right, we need somebody to like, handle the ball, and we need somebody to like bang down low, get rebounds, right? And we need somebody who can like stretch the floor, shoot on the 3-point line, right? You could do something similar. Like we need someone who really understands legal and someone who really understands like the guts of like L2 crypto, cryptography, right? We need someone who understands community at a really high level, right? And so we need someone who understands governance, like in meta governance, right? And you could kind of build a roster of this, and then have delegates who are mapped well to that. And then what Chase is speaking to here is like, ideally, a holder of the OP token could then. Right now, they can only delegate their tokens to one person, right? Theoretically, they could be like, okay, there's like 10 categories of OP delegates, and I'm going to choose my favorite one from each category, from the community building category, from the crypto, like the cryptographic, like L2 ecosystem research category, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's something we need to figure out, right? And I actually think there's some really interesting teams building towards this. I think Agora, who we mentioned before, is doing some work on a primitive for this. I think there's a team at Uniswap building something called Franchiser, which is a smart contract that would allow you to sort of like split your delegation across multiple accounts. So I think there's a lot of really interesting work happening in this space that we hope to bring on board at Tally, because I think it's going to be really important for these DAOs to continue to improve over time.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep you updated on DAO Talk, and it's something we're always thinking about at Tally and integrating new features around. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes in the coming months, years, decades, centuries, etc. Centuries. All right, little dot take segue into our weekly news, kind of like what's going on in Tally and other DAOs in the ecosystem, from former DAO Talk interview guest Shreyas from Llama. I think he's still a llama, right? Yep, he's still a llama.
Yeah.
There's a renaissance in on-chain governance. High key agree. I know you agree too, Frisson.
Dude, I'll never forget interviewing Shreyas, because we always ask people what their favorite place in the world is, and Shreyas is hilarious. He said it was Paris, because the first time he went to Paris, he hated it because everyone there thought they were better than him, and then he went there the second time and realized they were better than him, and he likes Paris now. I laughed so hard in that response.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, so funny.
I love that.
But yeah, you gotta tell me what you think about this, Tommy. I can't just be out here rambling. Like,
no.
What do you think about the renaissance in on-chain governance? Is it happening? Do you agree?
I think it is.
I
agree.
Excited?
I have a large wave of emotions. I think definitely is. I don't know if renaissance is the right word. I think we're laying the foundation for a renaissance. But I think renaissance like implies there is like everyone's kind of on the same page, and there's this just like open, not open, but like understood agreement that like we're all just like, I don't know. I keep coming back to like we're all on the same page, and I think we've talked about a lot in this episode and other episodes. Like, there's an on-chain governance like resurgence for the people that have always believed it, but I still think there's a lot of work to do in regards to like actually getting people to understand why being on chain matters, why you need to build on chain, why you need true decentralization, why you need to be trustless. And I think we're a lot of scandals or a few more rug pulls and scandals away before there's like a true on-chain governance renaissance. Within our little circle of like our on-chain circle, I think it feels that way. But I think the more I talk to other people and plug into other organizations and talk to other people. I think we're the minority, but that doesn't mean like a renaissance isn't coming. I just think there's a lot more work to do. And I think what we've talked about, especially as we've kind of like talked about the long-term like vision of DAO Talk and Tally and how we want to like structure content. I think it's dangerous to just be talking like this. I don't think this is a bad tweet. I love the tweet. I think it's the thought and like the theme is right. I just think we can't be resting on our laurels. So like, oh, like 2 or 3 big protocols turned into DAOs in the past 6 months. Like I think it's important to remember like we still have a long way to go, and we still have to have that like mentality of like, what's the word? Just like having that chip on our shoulder. Like we have a lot of work to do, because I think we do. That's why I like talking to normies a lot, because they tell me how crypto sucks and it's going to fail. And not just normies, like smart normies, like TradFi normies and friends that I highly respect. I like to just like send them texts. Maybe this is masochistic, but I'm like, I asked them like, give me your worst like takes on crypto. Why do you think it's going to fail? What sucks about it? Like, what do you think of me? What do you think of DAOs, etc.? Puts things in perspective, because I think this podcast and like crypto Twitter in general, there's a lot of echo chambers, which is good, but also it's like long term we have to look the potential downfall of what we're doing, or like not the potential downfall, but like how high like the odds are stacked against us, in order to like truly understand like the work that needs to be done. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. That was a little bit of a ramble, but I know how you feel now that you ramble. But what do you think?
I'm really glad you experienced a wave of emotions about this topic, and also you were able to share. On
I
Boys
hate
Club,
you.
they do a feelings check-in, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to claim that we have a feelings check-in in the way of Boys Club, but I feel like you were able to go to that
Yeah,
place a little bit. I'm really happy
dude.
for you, Tommy.
I
Thanks for
mean,
sharing.
I told Frisson off air, like, uh, I've been working through some anger the past couple of days, just around like the ecosystem as a whole. And like, yeah, I think that kind of encapsulates it all. Like I
Yeah.
look at it all day and we see it and we're like, yes, obviously this is it. Cause like we stare at it all day. And then just to see see that not, take hold in the way we truly believe it is going to take hold, and the manner and speed in which we want it to take hold, is frustrating. But nevertheless, we persist.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's exciting though that people are building on-chain governance. I think there is a lull in the bull market in interest in on-chain governance because um, it has a lot of challenges, like especially around sort of the technicality of it. And people just want control, right? They're like,
Yeah.
do I really want to deploy a governor and actually let anyone permissionlessly govern my protocol? Or do I want to like keep having my little 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5 multi-sig and like let people do polls but control the execution myself, And thinking the bull market, a lot of people ended up, going more that keeping control route for various reasons. And so I think it's really exciting to see this sort of, resurgence of people really interested in building on chain and doing on chain governance. I don't think on chain governance is the only thing having a renaissance too. I think on chain is having a renaissance, right? Like doing cool shit on chain so you can actually do it trustlessly and like verify the state on Ethereum, I think is like becoming more of a vibe again. And I mean, that's what I'm here for. So I know I'm excited. That's for sure. I think I
Yeah.
feel a wave of emotions as well.
Yeah. You feel that in your gut, that just the burning desire to go on chain.
I feel this fear, this existential fear, like that you described, of like we have this belief of where things are going at Tally, but are people ever going to see it too? But I also feel this excitement that there's momentum in our direction. Yeah, I'm tapping in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to some news from friends of Tally, friends of the pod, and Tally itself. Radar, who in our end of the year awards was the DAO of the Future. They won the DAO of the Future award, which, reiterating the little side note on that, I think all DAOs are DAOs of the future. because I think the DAO movement as a whole is going to improve. But they released their first like community enabled like treasury funding mechanism situation. I'm sure I'm butchering that, the exact words of it, but they released a Patreon NFT this week around funding their entire project. So what they do, Radar is kind of like a research DAO. It's hard to explain exactly what Radar is because it is an eclectic group of individuals who just are committed to, I would call it like the general Web3 vibe of like kind of pushing that culture forward in an equitable and intentional way. And a big part of what they want to do in regards to like actually becoming a fully functioning DAO that has revenue and is able to fund their researchers and fund their contributors is this project. So it releases a Patreon NFT. I don't know the exact price, but I think it's like around $100 if you convert it from ETH. It goes directly to the treasury and it funds their projects, which they do. They release 3 research reports every year. You can go check out the first one. I'll link it in the show notes. It's called a futures report. It's pretty interesting. It's hard to describe, but it is one of the more talking about feelings and emotions. In the past year, it's one of the single greatest pieces of content in terms of evoking emotions and thought-provoking articles and collections of content I've read in a very long time. Really interesting stuff coming out of there. And I love seeing DAOs find new and interesting ways to not only collect funding and seed the treasury, but activate the community itself. So awesome stuff coming out of Radar. And I think like 4 or 5 past DAO Talk interview guests are a part of Radar DAO as well. So interesting stuff coming out of there. Moving on to news from Tally. The Tally API, which we've mentioned before on the pod, was in private beta. It is in private beta no more. It is public. It is out there. If you're listening to this, you can go generate a key yourself and start building on the Tally API. Frisian, thoughts on the Tally API? We talked a little bit about it last week. Again, why should people care about it? And also, why should you build on it? Especially, why should you build on it at Ethereum Denver? If we can, sneak peek that a little bit.
Yeah, Tally API, super exciting. We have this like really clean, highly developer friendly source of DAO data, right? Like you want to know what's going on chain. You want to help other people understand what's going on chain. You want to notify them about proposals. You want to visualize DAO data. Now, instead of like building the infrastructure to be able to do it yourself, you can just use Tally. So hit us up. If you're at ETH Denver and you're a builder, come see us. We were offering $5,000 in bounties for building on the Tally API, and yeah, it's gonna be sick.
Absolutely. Other news out of Tally, Blur. If you haven't heard, if you haven't heard, you probably live under a rock. But Blur, which is an NFT marketplace, had their token airdrop this week, and their governance is live on Tally. If you claimed any of your Blur, go ahead to. If you claimed Blur this week and you want to become active in Blur's governance, go to tally.xyz/gov/blur. I'll link that below as well. Sign in, create a profile, delegate your vote, or delegate it to yourself, and start becoming active in Blur DAO, if that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, we need some more delegates. This is an old screenshot, so there's a few more delegates now, but we don't want Dennison to be the only delegate in Blur. There's 44,000 holders of Blur, and there are only 4 people who have delegated, whether that's themselves or anyone else. Yeah, that's rough. So please go if you're a Blur holder and you plan to, to hold Blur. I think you want to be able to be involved in what they're doing with governance going forward. So, delegate to yourself if you're an NFT person and you want to be involved, or delegate to someone else. I think Dennison's accepting delegations. Like he knows a lot about governance because he's the CEO of Tally, but he's also founded a bunch of like legitimate NFT projects. Like Dope Wars and Pride Punks and Solos. So he's definitely like an NFT person also. So hit Dennison with your voting power. And generally, please go to Tally and delegate. This is tough. Like 44,000 holders and 4 voters. That's not good. So let's get some more governors in the mix here.
Yeah, not only if you're listening, go delegate if you're a holder, but also like proliferate the whole concept of like going to delegate and like actually participating in governance. I feel like we still have a lot of work to do around people viewing an airdrop as free money versus, you know, this is a way to seed governance and this is a way to actually have your voice be heard in the DAO itself. So yeah, please delegate. Final news, again, bringing it right back around where we started with the Ethereum Denver talk in, what is today? The 16th. In 12 days, DAOs at Denver will be happening. It'll be a party, a very low-key party. I wouldn't call it a party, a celebration of DAOs. Tally's panel was announced last week at DAOs at Denver. It'll feature Dennison as the host, our lovely Dennison, and then 4 wonderful panelists.
It's a great mix of people. Dennison, obviously from Tally, but the panelists will be able to speak to what they're seeing in the on-chain DAO, on-chain governance ecosystem. Theo is the lead of Safe DAO, which is like one of the biggest and most important DAOs in the space. They govern Gnosis Safe. And then Meg, awesome DAO leader of Metrics DAO LDF, she does lots of things, but one of the things she does is she's a steward of Joke DAO, which is a really interesting governance tool, DAO tool, community tool that we've talked about a lot on this podcast in the past. And then Elad is active in the Nouns ecosystem, which we just had a whole chat about Nouns and what an interesting project it is. So should be a great vibe. There's going to be 4 other panels. So this is the second one of the day. We'll keep announcing them as we get closer to the event. Should be a good time.
Hell yeah. We got one more DAO Talk weekly until the big show at ETH Denver. And then we'll be in person. So yeah, fuck yeah. I'm excited. Feelings check. How do you feel about this week, Frisson? Wrapping it up. I feel great.
Maybe we should. We can't do a feelings check in. Like
we gotta say something else.
It would just be so lame compared to boys clubs.
What about like?
Could do like a
feelings check in. So good.
Yeah, governance bro so vibe check. It's the same thing, check. But vibe different check? Words.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just do the feelings check-in, but just like also use it as an opportunity to show Boys Club every feelings single time. Feelings check-in
presented by Boys Club Crypto.
And make it sound like they sponsored us, but really we just like them that much that we're just saying just it's presented by Boys Club.
Simps for Boys Club.
I know it's not good.
It's insane.
Anyway,
it's good. It's fine. But yeah.
I feel good, man. I'm a little burnt out. Just getting ready for ETH Denver. It's just like,
yeah, man.
Dude, events are insane. I've been working in marketing for a long time because I'm old. And when you first get into marketing, everyone like graduates from college and they're like, I want to work in events. And then what you realize is that events are by far the hardest part of marketing. Like just brutal hours, like they're super stressful. So it's kind of like a meme in the marketing world. But events are hard, but they're very fun when they go off well.
Yeah, I put a tweet out a week ago about that exact topic, and like all the event planners that follow me are like, "Duh, you like, yeah, obviously, bro." I'm like, I know, I'm literally agreeing with you. Why are you yelling at me? I'm agreeing with you. But yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work, thankless work too, I believe, because the event is the product, right? The people that plan the event is not the product. So if you're listening to this and you're an event planner, I love you. I respect you. I see you.
Yeah, shout out to the event people out there in the world grinding behind the scenes to make sure that things go off smoothly.
Absolutely. As always, go subscribe to daotalk.substack.com for the DAO Talk written newsletter, tally.substack.com for the Tally newsletter, which is a DeFi DAO governance newsletter. Not very different, but in the same vein as DAO Talk, but much more specific. Highlights all of the on-chain proposals that we might not get to on the show. A little more not monotonous, but highlighting the proposals that we were not able to talk about on the show. You see like top 10 things to read from the week. Cool Horse Grow, who's a Content Code member, is doing an absolutely amazing job with that. And then make sure to subscribe, leave a review, hit us up on Twitter if you have anything that you want to say that you disagree with or agree with or just love us. And we'll see you in Ethereum Denver. Frisson, it's been an honor. Peace.
Peace.